Good afternoon, everybody. Bell has been rung, so the meeting is underway. I think this is my last week filling in for James. Well, welcome, everybody. I think we'll kick this off with the pledge. And and then Barb will lead us in God Bless America.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
All right, so Barb, you want to move right along here with an inspirational moment or two?
All right, I have two words of inspiration here today. Being humble means recognizing that we are not on earth to see how important we can become, but to see how much difference we can make in the lives of others. That really struck me for Kiwanis. And since next week is 4th of July, picnic season officially underway, this is advice from a pickle. Life can be hard sometimes. Deal with it. Relish every moment you share with those you love. The door to happiness is always ajar. If you want to be sweet, you have to know what sour tastes like too. Remember, life is never a dull moment, but don't worry. In the end, everything will be just brine.
Well, Barb, thank you very much. It's very inspirational. Thank you. All right, so I tried to find an interesting tidbit about what happened on this date in history. It really hasn't been that memorable of a date. Well, sort of. Back in, I guess this is a big deal. Back in 1914, a Serb nationalist assassinated Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand, started the First World War. And that was pretty big. And in 1919, which was 5 years later, Treaty of Versailles was signed, ending the war. So another big deal. But in 71, Elon Musk was born. Can you imagine? I mean, 71, it's not that old.
I have shoes older than that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. 1926, Mel Brooks was born, and in 1960, John Elway was born. So not a, fairly good date. Sometimes it's loaded with all kinds of interesting things, but that's yeah. All right. Well, if there's nothing more on the business end of things, we'll turn it over to our speaker, who was also a member of our club. And Tom, your membership goes back how far?
I'm not sure, probably about 10 years or so.
Okay.
I'd like to tell you in a moment.
So Tom,
That's all right.
Lubben is no stranger to the Kiwanis Club of Easton. From his bio, he is a man in his 80s. You certainly don't look to be in your 80s, but who's lived, in his own words, not mine, a very long and checkered life. He's been married 3 times, twice to the same woman. Congratulations, that's quite a feat there. And if you add the years up, I'm sure it'll quite a few. Now has an extended family living in 6 states. He's beginning his 60th year in education and continues to teach in college. He admits to taking 19 vitamins a day in 4 gulps every morning before his morning devotion. So that in and of itself is quite a feat. To the ages of 60 and 75, he opened 4 artistic focused charter schools that today serve a combined 2,000 students and employ 200 employees. Tom began seriously writing in his 70s and published 2 books, one fiction, one nonfiction, this past April. His mystery series features amateur detective B.J. Gleason, and 2 have been published, with 3 more yet to come. So, Tom, we're glad you're here, anxious to hear your story, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, if I can figure out all the technology. I'm glad, very glad to be here today, and one of the things you have to be careful of when you're in your 80s is you start to trip over words. And I was at a meeting this past Saturday and we had to give a little outline of ourselves. And I was talking about my 27 extended family members. The only problem is I said I have, instead of saying 27 extended family members in 6 states, I said I have 27 children in 6 states. So that raised a lot of eyebrows, and that's why I threw the word checkered in there. The talk today is really, as you know me from my charter school background. That's one of the reasons I hooked up with the group in Easton. But over the last several years, I've moved away from that. And because I'm an overactive 80-year-old, I have to keep doing things. So I took to writing beginning in my 70s. And let's see if this is.
Did you flip it on the right side here?
I'm clipped, but what?
No.
Oh. All right, I just did that.
On the left-hand side, there's a little button slide up.
Oh, slide it up. Yep, I think I did it now. Yes, I did. Okay. One of the things people often ask is, how long does it take to write a book? And quite honestly, books come from your life experience. And the fact that I've lived a so-called checkered life, we write about what we know. And then if you're a fiction writer, you add to that and you embellish. And so I will confess to you now that I am not a serial killer, even though that's the main person in some of my works. My first novel, Death Among the Pines, was set in the year 2000, but it was really based with life experiences I had between 1980 and 1990. As I said, I've been married 3 times, twice to the same woman. I married my first wife, and we celebrated our 60th year together this month, even though there was a break of about 20 years in between. So we came back to one another. While I was separated, I found myself in South Jersey, and I encountered a woman that worked in a bar, and so she became the character Jade in the book. Had to change the name of the tavern, which is the Seaville Tavern in just outside of Sea Isle City. I spent a lot of time in the Pine Barrens. The Pine Barrens take up a huge, vast swath of New Jersey. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Pine Barrens at all. Okay, and lots of times I know as a younger man, I'd be driving down the parkway and see all these trees. That basically is the Pine Barrens. In fact, one of my experiences, I was visiting my friend. I left her house at about 11, and I got lost in the Pine Barrens and didn't get back to North Jersey, where I lived at the time, until 4 a.m. It's a pretty vast area. There are some amazing things that operate within the Pine Barrens. A lot of it is mythology. For instance, the Jersey Devil that you may have heard about. But then there are other things that are true. There are pinies with 6 fingers on one hand. And that's from some of the interbreeding that existed over a long time in the South. So I've had a number of experiences that led me to, well, anyway, there's 2 stories that are on there that I'll share. One is I was visiting my friend one night, and I was driving through the pines in a housing development, and there was a beautiful sculpted eagle on the top of a mailbox. And I thought, wow, isn't that neat? And I went to visit my friend, and 2 hours later I came home and I wanted to see the same sculptor. It was gone. It wasn't a sculptor, it was a real eagle. The other thing that happened, I'm a bit of a duffer as far as golf is concerned, and there's a little 9-hole course just south of Atlantic City. And I was playing it one day, and it was a circular 9 holes, and I hit a ball into the rough. And when I walked into the trees and I looked around, I was standing in the middle of a cemetery. And the tombstones were from the 1700s. And it turned out that it was a Revolutionary War cemetery in South Jersey. You know, who would have thunk, really? So we use stories like this, and there's your Jersey Devil. There's a monument to a guy that crashed in the pines. Let's see if this is working. Yep, there we go. Okay. The question is, and by the way, over 2,000 books get published every single day. And they don't all sell a lot. Mine included. For instance, if you're Prince Harry, he put a book out and the first day it sold 1 million copies. So he's got a little edge on me, I think. This book actually started, I hand wrote it, as you can see in the upper right, and then eventually moved it to the computer. And by the way, like I said, this book took about 12 years to get fully put together, but the subsequent books have really only taken 2 to 4 months to write once I got the handle on things. There's over 3,000 publishers and there's 1,000 literary agents in the United States. And when you go with a publisher, they do it their way. For instance, one of the books that this just got published within the past year. It's a spiritual journal. And I don't know why the publisher decided to make it this big, because I write journals myself and they're about a quarter of the size, but they did. That was there. So you're really at the whim of the publisher when you're doing writing. And you have to, when I first wanted to get published, I had to go writing to all of these people all over the place. You have to write what's called a query letter, in which you have to put everything about your book in 1 page. And you have to really do a summary. And then finally you get a contract. And the first contract from Austin Macaulay was about 12 pages in length. And it lists everything, including the royalties, which are very small, and all the different rights to the book. And then it was another year before the book was finally published. They let me know in February of 21 that they were going to publish the book, and then the book didn't get published for another year. And then I've started going to different book sales. I go to a place called Line of the Pines, which is a real interesting craft fair in South Jersey and Stockton. And I continue to go to book signings. This is a blurb. I'll skip through it now. It's about what the book is about. You had to write. I continue these events. I have to share with you something. My biblical hero is a guy named Caleb. And I don't know if you remember that Old Testament story where Moses sent all of his lieutenants out to find a good place they could go. Sent 12 groups. 11 groups came back and said, there's monsters, there's giants, we can't go anywhere. 2 guys, Joshua and Caleb, came back and said, we know a place, it's going to be the land of milk and honey. Long story short, they said, okay. They went ahead, took them 40 years, by the way, for a 1-month trip. So talk about getting lost in the pines. 45 years later, and Caleb had been 40 when he did this. 45 years later, Joshua's now the head. And they're getting ready to go into battle and they need a leader. And Caleb steps forward at 85 and says, use me. So he's my hero. My life kind of began at age 80. And I'm enjoying pretty much every minute of it. My books are available on Amazon. This is my commercial moment. Death on the Bayou is the second in the series. And then The Year's Journey just came out this month also. And then I have a pending book called The Eyewitnesses, which will come out before the end of the year. And the Eyewitness book is about 10 miracles in the life of Jesus, written from the perspective of a bystander, somebody who was standing, working in the stable the night Jesus was born. Somebody that was bathing in the river when Jesus was baptized. So it's a different perspective, but it's all based on the gospel. So I'm not going. And that's basically it. I enjoy writing. It's really helped me at this point in my life, and I'd be glad to answer any questions about writing or authorship or anything. Yeah.
So I thought when you embarked on this journey to start to become an author, what surprises you the most? I mean, about what maybe a difference of what you thought it was going to be versus what it really is.
How hard it is truly to get published. The writing, that's something you find time for and you can do it. And you write from your heart, you write about things you know, but then once you get it going, I belong to 2 author groups now. I belong to the Mystery Writers of America, who are based in New York, and I was at their meeting on Saturday. And there's also the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Organization here in the Lehigh Valley, and they are authors of all different sorts of things. Many people self-publish. You can publish on Amazon without any cost to you. You just submit it through Kindle Publishing. And if they like what you've given them, they will publish it. No charge for you. Anything else?
But then do you get the royalties?
Yes. Yes, you still get royalties.
Still get royalties.
Yeah.
So do you have a certain time that you write, or are you like disciplined? I'm gonna write now, or do you just?
I'm not a very disciplined person, so I write when I have time. So right now college is over. I've got a little more time to write during the day. Generally, my wife goes to bed earlier than I do. So I might write from 10 o'clock at night to midnight. If I'm not playing a game on the computer, Anything else?
I just want to ask one question.
Sure.
When you go send your works to the publisher,
Yeah.
he gives you all the criticism back.
No, they don't give you any.
Somewhere, I have a friend that wrote a book and he hasn't got it finished yet. He's still trying to get it published.
Okay.
But he said that they wrote back and they asked him to change all these things around, all these suggestions. Does that really bother you when somebody does that?
Not really, because some of it, for instance, I use the word, because I like Jameson's whiskey, I use the word Jameson's throughout. My character drinks Jameson's, and I used it throughout that. Well, when they edited it, they changed, they said you can't use Jameson.
That's what I mean, edit the word, I guess.
Yeah. So my second book is set in New Orleans, and I'm familiar with New Orleans. So I wrote a letter to all the bars on Bourbon Street where I was going, where I'd been, and where I set the novel, and basically said, can I use the name? And nobody answered me.
Oh,
What does that mean? They're going to wait for me to use the name and then sue me. You know, so I changed the names
Yeah.
on my own as far as that's concerned.
I have to say, you are the second person I personally now know that's written a book, and both of them were Kiwanian.
Ah,
I can't think of his name from Slateville, Kiwanis, he passed on. He was a realtor in Pocono. I just can't think of his name now. He wrote a book about his family and his wife, and he made 24 copies so that his family had it, some extra. So he published 24 copies, but he did it himself.
it's hard to tell how many you sell. Yeah,
Well, actually, there are 3 Kiwanians that, you're mentioning that one. One of our own Easton Kiwanians has written and published, and that's Chris Paulus.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of off, some of the stuff is kind of off the wall. But it's not really a story. It's anyway, he's published as well. I've been asked, I spent a little over 30 years as an Easton police officer.
okay.
23 of those years as a criminal investigator. And people would ask me about, different things that I was involved in and so forth. And they often say, "Oh, you should write a book about this stuff," right? So it's
You should.
enlightening to know that that's that much of a problem to get published. It convinces me not to.
I'll tell you a funny story now. We're at this meeting and there were about 25 people there, and one guy came in very late. And we all talked about what we were writing, went around the table, and when it got to him, he said, "I'm sorry I'm late." And then he gave his background, and he was a retired FBI DEA officer, and he had worked with the mobs in New Jersey and New York. And he had decided he'd try to put some stuff together in a nonfiction book, and he did. And he just talked to 1 or 2 people, but that day, some publisher called him and said, "We want your book, we're going to publish it, and we're going to make it #1. So you never know where this stuff goes, really. But I mean,
How about the edge, like, you submit a manuscript
yeah,
from a grammatical point of view, and are you responsible for documenting?
that's a good question. This first book has too many grammatical errors in it. And that's because I figured they would edit. They didn't.
Right.
They edited things like you shouldn't use Jameson's. So the second book doesn't, because I took it to a professional editor and had it edited. And now there's things you can use on your computer for future books that I've been using myself that self-edits your work as you go along. And it's not just spell check. It's because I would do things like I'd want to write the word from and I'd write form, and spell check doesn't catch that. It takes a good editor. Or ChatGPT. Have you discovered that yet? You should, if you haven't heard of it. That's artificial intelligence. ChatGPT you can get for nothing. And it's a very interesting, it's what I call Google on steroids. It'll give you very good and accurate, fairly information instantly.
Now, would you submit a manuscript, do you decide, does your publisher ask you how many you want to have printed? I mean,
That's totally up to them. For instance, with Kindle, which is Amazon, they have their own printing service, so they print on demand. See, it's not like the old days where you have to print books and send them out. Amazon, if you order this book from Amazon, they will print a copy and mail it to you. Now, they may have a few already printed.
Even hardbound?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think most of the Kindle stuff is softbound. All right, well, thank you very much. And by the way, I have fun doing this. So if you know a group and that you want somebody to kill some time, I'm glad to do it. Thank you. Yeah.
Do you do any children's books?
No, but I'll tell you a funny story. my daughter is a highly successful writer of children's books.
Oh, did they have the final one?
And she has a series of 25 books called The Dragon Masters, which are widely read, and they're in like 4 different languages now. So I wish I could be as prolific an author as she is.
Is South Jersey a good marketing area for you? I mean, the people live, I know you go to like a bookstore in Cape May, and there's lots of books about the local area written by local authors, which are.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It varies. It's hard to say. It's hard to get a handle on how many books are sold. Like I said, unless you're, but I know my daughter, she'd be mad at me if she knew I told you this. She's in her mid-50s now. She makes 6 digits a year in royalties for her books.
And this is children's books.
Yeah,
Does she have an illustrator? Excuse
me?
Does she have an illustrator? Somebody who's going
The publisher does they'll get the illustrator. He doesn't have to do that.
John would like some airtime. John, how about clicking on?
Yes, I was just going to mention that I did have a book out some years ago, Last Glory to Umberto. I don't know if you remember it, Bill.
Yes, yes. Yes, I have that copy at home.
Bill, can you say it louder because we couldn't hear what John said? What's the title of the book?
What's the title of the book, John?
Last Glory to Umberto.
Last Glory to.
Umberto, Mbordo, set in West Africa. You can find it on Amazon by Googling Last Glory or John C. Kennedy. Don't try John Kennedy, but John, you can Google John C. Kennedy, but not John Kennedy.
That's funny because you can find my fiction under Tom Lubben because that's what I gave them when I gave them the book. But my spiritual stuff is under Thomas Lubben. So, and my nonfiction work as well. So if you plug in Thomas Lubben, you see my nonfiction stuff. If you type in Tom Lubben, you see my fiction stuff.
I tend to forget how many Kiwanians I know that have written books.
So the Death on the Bayou isn't on the Kindle?
Yes, it is.
It only has it in paperback.
I'm pretty sure it's available on Kindle.
It's on Amazon, Tom. That's what we're looking.
Yeah,
They have your Pines. You can get in a variety of different ways, but the Bayou one is just, it says paperback.
I'll have to check that. I'm pretty sure that doesn't cost them anything.
To put up,
That's why Kindle is far less expensive.
Yes.
Buy.
right. So if you did the Kindle, would you be, since you said it wasn't edited? And
This one has,
but the Pines, could you go back and edit it and give them the revision to put in the Kindle?
not really. This is 2 years old now.
Yeah.
It's not worth it to me to do that.
To revise.
Or I don't know that the publisher would republish it. Now, if it was a mistake in Kindle, they can do it almost instantly.
Yeah, because I've read other books that have, the last one I read had a couple little,
Yeah,
it had the word 2 times in the text. So I've seen that in other books. So I was wondering if you could do that.
So when you sign off with the publisher, are all your rights with the exception of the royalties, you get all your rights to the books with the publisher now?
yeah, but I'm not sure what those rights are, you know what I mean?
They'll let you know if you mess them up. I'm sure. Anything else? Anybody have anything else for the good of the cause here?
Yeah.
All right, have a good week. We'll see everybody next week.
I'll tell you, Scott, 12:59.
Thank you.